going to believe at least one of the things I'm going to share with you. You're probably already aware that the Women's National Championship game, and I'm going to repeat this for people coming in a little bit later here in the live, and for those of you watching on the replay, you'll have already heard about at least one of these things. But one of these things, I guarantee you, there's not one person who's watching this knew or knows what I'm about to share with you. So stay tuned. As soon as we see a boost here in the numbers, which usually takes 60 to 90 seconds, I don't know if you're going to be as irritated as I am about this, because I just found out about it from one of my friends, because they're at a certain place, and he just told me something that I just instantly, literally was triggered. I could not believe that this would actually happen in this day and age, when both the men's and women's tournaments are being cross-promoted, and it is just, the NCAA is literally a bunch of incompetent, inept people that are sitting at these tables when it comes to what we see. Are there some great people at the NCAA? Are there some competent people that work hard and all that, yada, yada, yada? They have blown the opportunity for at least 2 decades, if not 3. And they continue to make, like, of epic proportions mistakes when it comes to some of the decisions that are being made with regards to the NCAA championships, the road to the Final Four, March Madness. And what I found out today is absolutely unbelievable. Welcome to the Sports Deli. I am Hootie Hoot. If you haven't been here before, welcome. But I'm going to share something with you that you probably did not know and would never have known unless you were here live watching with me, or you're watching this on the replay. It is literally one of the most ridiculous things that I have ever heard of in my entire life. Now, for those of you that have been following sports and you've been following things going on the men's and the women's side, and the history and the herstory of sports and Title IX, you'll probably know that a few years ago there was a weight room issue with the NCAA tournament. And they rectified that very quickly. They didn't have equal amounts of access to the women's national tournament as they did the men's. And so, it's just another example of how there are continued differences between the men's and the women's national championships. Well, if it wasn't bad enough, that the game, you can put somebody on a timeout on here? That is phenomenal. I just put somebody on a 30-minute timeout. I wanted to send them to the goo, but they're on a timeout for 1,800 seconds. It's bad enough that the women's national championship game is at noon Pacific. Like, if it's not ridiculous enough that the women, despite having 12.3 million viewers in the Elite Eight game between Caitlin Clark and Iowa and LSU and Angel Reese, and 14.2 million against Paige Beckers, and it's going to be over 15 million today. Now listen to this. You're not going to believe this. I'm going to share this with you in about a minute. You are not going to believe what the NCAA did. Now, if you guys have been watching both the men's and the women's tournaments, even if you haven't, I'm going to share something with you. Now, I've been podcasting for the last 4 years. I've been a college basketball coach for 24 years. I've been coaching for 32 years. I'm a professional basketball skills trainer. I have an acute awareness of what's going on when it comes to promoting and the inequalities that continue to exist on the women's side. So if you haven't been watching, they have been cross-promoting both the men's and the women's tournament. And to be quite honest with you, it's really uncomfortable to see the men's tournament being cross-promoted on the women's tournament when the women's games are going on. Like, to me, I get it, but if anything, the men's tournament should be cross-promoting, should be promoting the women's tournament to amplify the women's tournament. The men's tournament doesn't need promoting. The women's tournament needs promoting still, despite these numbers. How is the women's are they worried about people in England? Like, what exactly is the reason why the women's national championship, which you would think after last year's nearly 10 million people watched during its peak, 12 million people watched last year during the championship of LSU and Caitlin Clark and the Iowa Hawkeyes and the LSU women's basketball team. But how in the world, after last year, is today's game at noon Pacific and not in prime time? Now, let me share one other bit of information with you. Now, we all know the NCAA is one of the most incompetent organizations in the history of humankind. They have blown it for decades, and it's the reason why NIL came into existence, because if they had done NIL 30 years ago like they should have, instead of stealing money from student athletes, from scholar athletes, we would have been ahead of the game a long time ago. Now get this. Listen to this. Despite the cross-promoting going on by the NCAA on both broadcasts, the men's tournament during their broadcasts are promoting the women's tournament, fine. And the women's broadcasts are promoting the men's tournament, which are on opposite days. So the women's tournament for women's basketball, if you're just joining me, are on Friday and Sunday today, and the men's tournaments on Saturday and Monday. That's been the case for as long as I can remember. Now listen to this. Now, if you're on the replay listening to this, I guarantee you didn't know this either. If you're live watching me right now, 31 minutes before the national championship game is going to start, the men's Final Four, and if you don't know this, the men's and women's Final Fours are both the conventions. So all the coaches are there for the most part. There's clinics going on. There are educational seminars going on. There's all kinds of different things that are going on. So, and it's an amazing experience for the fans, for the coaches. They have association meetings. They have mentorship. There's a lot of amazing things that go on for the fans at the Final Four. It's not just the games. So if you didn't know that, it is literally the conventions. It is the men's and women's conventions at their respective sites. This year, the women are in Cleveland, and this is planned years in advance. And the men are in Phoenix this year. The men's tournament, now again, if you're just joining me, the men's and women's tournaments are cross-promoting the other tournament, which it's a little bit uncomfortable for me to be watching the women's tournament talking about the men's tournament during the broadcast. I hate it. I literally hate it. If the men's tournament wants to promote the women's, totally fine. Now, I've coached men's college basketball for 15 years. I've been on the women's side for the last 17. This will be my 18th. Listen to this. Now, you just heard me tell you that they've been cross-promoting. If you haven't been paying attention to both broadcasts, they talk about the other genders' Final Four and championship game, and in the earlier games, they were cross-promoting. They've been cross-promoting. They made that decision. So, which is fine. I don't like it, but it's whatever. The men's tournament scheduled, now we already know the NCAA is incompetent. They are inept and have been for as long as I can remember. They scheduled not one, but 2 clinics Two clinics at the men's Final Four. And they do clinics. They have coaches come in and talk about pressing and how to construct practices and defense and offense and quick hitters and skill development and all these types of things, which is fine. And they scheduled not one, but two clinics at the men's Final Four when they've been cross-promoting each of the other's tournaments and games and Final Four and championship game at the same time. At the same time. Like, it's bad enough. It is, like, unbelievable that they scheduled the women's championship game. Like, you didn't know that this was going to be who was in the finals this year. But after last year's numbers, over 12 million at its peak and 9.9 million during the championship game between LSU and Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark in Iowa last year, you would think that they would make this year with the potential of a rematch at a prime time. And instead, the inept NCAA, I don't know who's sitting at these tables. I cannot for the life of me, understand how today's national championship game with the women is at noon Pacific. And I had a friend say to me, it's a different audience. Who wants to watch a game while they're in church? Who wants to watch a game while they're at the men's national championship? If you don't think that there are men at the men's Final Four that want to watch the women's game, you are clueless. Like, I just can't for the life of me understand it. Why would you schedule the women's national championship at noon Pacific? And why would you schedule, when you've been cross-promoting on each other's broadcasts, why would you schedule not one, but two clinics at the men's Final Four at the exact same time as when the women's national championship is going on? Like, you would think that these two committees would have gotten together and said, listen, we're cross-promoting, what are we doing at these times? The games are on opposite days, that's great, but during the times of the games, during the times of the men's and women's games, what are we doing at the other respectives Final Four, at the conventions, at the other sites? So when the men's Final Four is going on, there should be nothing going on if you're going to cross-promote to be consistent during the times of the games so that people can watch the men's games. And during the women's games, there should be nothing going on at the men's tournament so that people can watch the women's Final Four games. But nope, they didn't do that. They didn't do that. They scheduled not one, but two clinics during the women's national championship game today, which, for those of you on the live, is going to start in 24 minutes. Like, the NCAA is so incompetent, I cannot, And I plan on coaching at the college level again, which I did for 15 years on the men's side and 8 on the women's side. 9 on the women's side. I can't even keep track at this point. And in 5 years, I'll be going back to the college level. And I've said this time and time again. Like, there are some mistakes you can wrap your head around. But if you're going to cross-promote both tournaments, do not schedule anything during the other, when the other games are going on for the other genders, stop scheduling things so that people can watch the other tournament because you've been cross-promoting. So be consistent. I just can't. When I found out that they scheduled 2, not 1, but 2 clinics at the men's Final Four at the exact same time as the women's national championship game today, I just threw my hands up in the air. Like, it's bad enough that the women's national championship is at noon today, Pacific. Like, what? People are still out running errands. People are at church. Like, people are out getting in and out, like, having lunch as a family. It's like, you guys not agree? Like, how can you disagree? Like, I don't understand it. Now, I don't know if you guys also saw, I'm going to talk about this again. I don't know if you guys saw this, but Dawn Staley was asked, the head coach of South Carolina, was asked her thoughts on transgender athletes playing at the NCAA level. And absolutely, there's no doubt. But it's a little bit more than that. You'd think when they're cross-promoting that they would have both committees sitting at a table. If they talk about nothing else for 5 minutes, that just simply says, hey, listen, do whatever you want at your respective conventions, but during the men's and women's Final Four games, don't schedule anything. And why is the men's Final Four games, the championship game, in prime time, and the women's national championship game, like, this ain't football. Football you could put at 6 a.m. and people are going to get up and watch it. You want to maximize the number of people, men and women, and people in the LGBTQIA plus community, however you identify. You want to maximize the viewership. Put the game in prime time. You're scheduling not one, but two clinics at the men's Final Four during the women's national championship game, which is ridiculously scheduled at noon Pacific. Absolutely unbelievable. Absolutely ridiculous and unbelievable. And I'm going to be coaching at the NCAA level in 5 years in 2029. I'm going to be going back to coaching college basketball. And I will criticize them just as much if they make the same idiotic, asinine, ridiculous, stupid decision to do any scheduling at the same time as any of the games. When the games are going on, don't schedule anything. How hard is that? Like, literally, how hard is that? Unbelievable. I'll be back in 20 minutes for a little watch party. So I hope you join me. And you should be as outraged as I am. It's just unbelievable. Like, get your lives together. Sit at the same table. And it doesn't take someone that much smarter than a bag of rocks to say, hey, do whatever you want at the Final Four. Just don't schedule anything at the same time as the other genders' games, because we're trying to cross-promote the other gender's Final Four. Unbelievable. Peace. See y'all in a little bit. Come back and join me. Can't wait. Women's National Championship game. Let me know what you think if you're watching this on the replay. And come back and join me if you're on the live. Let's do it, y'all. It was never a long shot. If you break it, you own it, baby. Go on, guys.